So I was talking to my brother-in-law yesterday, and he was curled up in what my sister calls the fetal position, when he's spiraling. You know, his thoughts are spiraling and he's feeling incredibly anxious. And I asked him, you know, what thoughts he was bringing alive, and he was talking about familiar thoughts of loss, of lacking a purpose, and everything was being filtered through the lens of I'm not good enough. And there was this feeling of panic, he described, you know, rising through his body, and an urgency, you know, to address it and get rid of it and pay a lot of attention to it. And, you know, it really does feel that way. It does feel urgent when we start to panic and we tell ourselves, I'm not okay. And I would never say to someone, you know, oh, it's just your thinking. You know, take the word just out of that sentence, because it's so powerful when we get trapped inside it and when we start to spiral, you know, the thoughts that we give meaning to and the apparent urgency of their nature. And we're telling ourselves, I'm not okay, you know, I'm not okay. And we go into, you know, this spiral. And perhaps the spiral is, you know, it's showing us something. You know, it's that uncomfortable rumble that's telling us that we're kind of, you know, getting a bit lost in our thinking, in our head, and telling ourselves we're not okay. And it's a bit like the rumble strip, you know, on the motorway. You know, it feels a bit uncomfortable, but it's quite a clever design. You know, it shows us when we're drifting. And so what Brandon kind of is thinking is that he's kind of lost interest. You know, he's been listening to these podcasts beforehand, and he was really interested in them, and lucid dreaming, and then for whatever reason, he's like, I've lost interest in all of it, and I think I'm getting depressed, and he's starting to panic. And it's interesting because, you know, when he says he's lost interest, could it perhaps be that actually he's just shifted his interest? He's shifted his attention. And his attention and his interest is, you know, is on his thoughts that he's lost interest. You know, he's paying them full attention, you know. This he's giving a lot of interest and attention to this thought that he's getting depressed. So it's not that he's lost interest in everything. It's just that he has shifted his attention and he's feeling it, all of it. So anyway, as we were talking, he and my sister, they were looking out the window at the bird table. And there were 2 doves sitting on the bird table. And my sister was kind of smiling as she was telling me that the doves found it hard to balance on the bird table. They were a bit clumsy, but, you know, they had found a way. And there was this moment of distraction. There was this moment of quiet, because we're just now looking at the doves. And I asked Brandon, I said, you know, when you're looking at the doves, do your thoughts get louder or do they get quieter? And he said, you know, they get quieter. And it's funny, isn't it? You know, when we're completely absorbed in something, we stop thinking about the other thing that we were paying attention to before. the thing that we were worrying about. You know, we get distracted from our story completely. And we didn't make the thoughts go away. We didn't challenge them. We didn't analyze them. We didn't process them. We didn't make them stop. We simply fell out of them, just for a moment. And yet, what we do is we tend to go straight back and pick them up again. It's funny, isn't it? I used to always do this. It would be like I would fall out of worry for a moment. Something would distract me. And then I would go, oh, hang on a minute. What was I worrying about? You know, what was I spiraling in a moment ago? Because I need to pick that up and think about it some more. And oh, there it is. You know, I find it again. And you know, and perhaps it's because we've told ourselves that those particular thoughts, they need our attention. You know, we need to fix them in order to feel okay. Because we've told ourselves, you know, I'm not okay. And it's like we're trying to feel okay, but at the same time we're telling ourselves, but I'm not okay. We kind of go around in a spiral and we put our focus straight back on all those thoughts that were making us feel so uncomfortable in the first place. And so moments earlier, you know, Brandon, my brother-in-law, he'd experienced the very OKness that he was searching for. Just right there. Without trying to make himself feel okay, he wasn't, you know, trying to stop his thinking. He simply felt better. The spiraling just wasn't there, you know, just for a moment. He was simply watching two doves trying to balance on the bird table. And for a moment, the thoughts weren't center stage anymore, and he felt okay. For a moment, the story of Brandon, that wasn't center stage. You know, it's like he fell out of the story whilst he was looking at the birds. And yet somehow we tell ourselves, that's not enough. You know, it needs to be more than that. And so we don't pay attention to the silence. We simply go back into the search, trying to feel okay, telling ourselves we're not okay. We go back into the spiraling and searching and trying, and we don't recognize this. We don't recognize that we're okay beyond it all. Until we do. And when we do, the search is over.